What's your opinion on the contention between belief in God and science? Why does this keep coming up?
Probably because there's these loudmouth celebrity atheistic scientists that don't represent the many, many faithful scientists and scientifically inclined people that are in the world, frankly.
Another factor is overly literalistic readings of Scripture, I think, hurts us. But yeah, it does seem like it's more apparent and at popular level than substantive and actual.
Yeah, I think if you asked a lot of college students, I'm sure they're brighter than I give them credit for, perhaps. But what do you even mean by science? That could be an embarrassing question for people. I don't think we know. It's like, well, it's just truth or Fauci or something.
Yeah. Well, I think Eccles is her last name. She wrote a book, I remember citing in Answering Atheism, looking at scientists who did not believe in God. And like, there's this common idea that like, oh, when you get into science, it shows you God doesn't exist and naturalism is true. And what she showed in her research of the beliefs of scientists is not that science is more likely to make you an atheist. It's more that atheists are just more inclined to want to pursue the sciences in many cases.
Yeah.
So it doesn't follow that science leads them to atheism, but that when you survey many of these people, especially scientists, as the science becomes more fundamental, when you get down to biology, chemistry, and mathematics and physics, you're more likely to find people who believe in God versus those who might study like a social science, like psychology.
I was with my children in Guatemala, and beautiful place, and my son Peter pointed to this volcano, and there was a cloud above the volcano. He said, I think God's right there, Dad. I think that's where heaven is. It was a beautiful thing to say, but it also made me think, gosh, is my faith just bullshit? Sometimes you get asked a very simple question like that. You're like, oh God, maybe this is just wrong, and we're talking our children into something that's insane. Well, let me finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think that's right. And here's how I answered, and I think I gave a good answer. I said, well, imagine, and this is Peter Crave's analogy, imagine two fetuses. What's the plural?
Feti?
Two fetuses in the womb, and one says to the other, do you think there's life after the womb? No, this is all there is. And the other one says, well, if there was life, what might it be like? Well, it'd be a very large, soft, warm place, much warmer than this. Like, they have no conception of what it might be like. The other thing I said, and I think this comes from Pascal, is trying to explain to a child how we get to heaven can sound like science fiction, but surely it's a lot more difficult to get from nowhere and nothing to here, which we've done, than from here being something to somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I think, because I love having little kids because and Gavin's been in this boat too, I'm
the
sure.
best philosophers.
They are. Well, they ask these questions. So what I try to do in our house is teach them to be little philosophers.
That'll come back to haunt you. Poor Laura, she's going to stay at home with little Trents.
The problem is now, especially with our oldest son, he's a little lawyer. Oh. And he argues with us, and he often wins his cases, and it makes us feel like
text me over Slack.
Yeah,
sorry, he's true.
No, you're
Slack
fine.
is down, Matt.
He puts forward this case that makes us feel like a rule or a punishment was truly unreasonable. We have to rescind it, and so I'm concerned at his arguing abilities at the age of 8. But I might ask them, why do you think God lives there? Like, why there instead of down here? Well, because it's high up. So God lives in a high up place. What might be higher up than that volcano?
Yeah.
Could we go higher? So you're like God's not here. He's over all of this. Like, how could we get higher than that? And then like, I might play around with drawing a stick figure on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Edward Abbott has a great novel from the 19th century called Flatland,
A
Tale of Interdimensional Romance.
Yep.
And to help people understand, like, well, what is God like? It's like if you drew a stick figure in a house, it's like for that two-dimensional figure to understand us, like up and trying to get beyond that, but to know there's something beyond what your limited finite view is.
So that's really helpful. But have you not ever had that experience that I've had where somebody asks you a simple question, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've somehow talked myself into this elaborate myth.
Oh gosh.
Now, in defense of myself here, and I think Lewis talked about this as well, he said the importance of faith is it helps you to be sort of steady in whatever you happen to hold to. He's like, there were times when I was an atheist, but the whole thing, the whole belief, the whole idea of atheism seemed very improbable. Now that I'm Christian, I have those moods as well.
I think it helps to just be able to acknowledge that and not feel that there's a shame factor with having a stab of doubt now and again.
Yeah.
That's actually perhaps a sign of a healthy faith. It shows how much you care. It shows you're thinking about it. I think it was Tim Keller. He talked about every good faith has some doubts. Your body needs antibodies. You need some, if you don't have any doubts ever, that's not a healthy faith, probably. And but what you said of just going, it's a comfort in those moments to go back to the basics. So one of the things you mentioned is, okay, think of the alternative. Doesn't it take a lot more faith to think that something came out of nothing? And you go back to those basic, like to me, it's like the metaphor I use is when you're walking up a steep staircase and you put your hand on the railing and you kind of steady yourself. There's a couple of arguments that are like that steadying for me.
I like that.
And the cosmological is one of them.
That's a great, I like that analogy a lot.
I like what you said about the antibodies, because it's like if you always protect yourself from doubt, that like you think like, oh, I've never had my faith challenged, like I'm going to be really healthy. It'd be like somebody who like never let themselves get a cold or like never went around anyone who was sick and always like was shut up and hypochondriac. But then it's like, oh, I'm really strong now. It's like, really? Or will the slightest breeze like send you into the hospital? Like you're just not prepared to engage any of this.
And real quick, Pascal used to talk about how I used to struggle with this so much. Why doesn't God make it clearer? Why doesn't he just make his evidence so plain that we all see it so clearly? But Pascal talks about God set up the world the way it is because there's something that is good for us. Do we really need total clarity? Would that be what our soul needs? Or is there a good purpose that can come about through there being moments of ambiguity and struggle like that? And Pascal is a comfort in that way.
Daniel James had to argue the existence of God with somebody who will only accept physical evidence. He says scientific physical evidence, so to broaden it a little more, but often we do treat atheists treat God like this thing.
I think
that
sometimes
I should be able to find.
what I might say is, so you want me to prove the non-physical creator of everything with only physical evidence? Like, I guess I would ask them, what do you mean? And just try to make sure we're having a fair engagement. I guess I might say, well, why does it have to be physical evidence? Why can't it just be evidence? Mm-hmm. Like, why? And then ask for a reason.
And I think in that circumstance, too, you can show that the physical, it doesn't explain itself.
Right.
So you can show basically that's an arbitrary limitation because the data set you've limited yourself to is not self-explanatory. The other thing is you can still make an argument for the resurrection of Christ. That would be within the realm of what they're limiting themselves to. And I've been amazed. Like, that was another one that I went into skeptically thinking, historical arguments like this, it's probably way too difficult to assess levels of probability. I was blown away by how strong a probabilistic argument you can make that the best explanation for the launching of the Christian church is the resurrection of Christ.
I like this little story. Imagine if you said a man goes down to his child's sandpit with a metal detector, and after an hour and a half of painstaking going over every square inch, comes up, wipes the sweat from his brow and says to his wife, that settles it. There are no diamonds in that sandpit. And of course, the problem is it's not meant to detect diamonds.
Or Legos.
And yeah, okay. and science, an inductive method of investigation we've invented to discover truths about the natural world isn't meant to. It's the wrong tool. You're going to need something else. This clip was sponsored by Hallow, which is the #1 prayer and meditation app on the web. Go download their app by going to hallow.com/MattFradd. When you sign up there, you get 3 months of their app, complete access for free. If at the end of the 3 months you feel like it's not worth your money, you don't have to pay a cent, but I think you will use it. I pay for it. My wife has it. My friends have it. It has sleep stories. It'll help you pray the rosary. It'll help you get into a prayer routine. 100% Catholic and super, super excellent. It actually just surpassed TikTok this month. I'm not even making that up. When I say that, it sounds like it's...
No, I know. Yeah.
It's amazing. Hallow, HALLOW.com/MattFradd. Click the link in the description below so that they know we sent you.